Good. We'll call this to order. First order of business is the pledge of flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You will approve the minutes of October 6th.
Approve.
Second to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, go ahead and your reports. No, I'm all set. Lindsay? Everything that we'll touch on later. Town manager's report.
Sure. The software upgrade that we were doing last week on our computers happened. Let's just put it that way. It didn't happen very well. As a result of the upgrade, our server, which used to just be a standalone computer, was deemed inadequate. So now all of that is going to be hosted remotely, which does allow us to do business off-site, but costs money naturally. So it's an incremental cost, but I thought it was reasonable, so we just made that transition over rather than purchasing a new server, which is going to have to be high-end, all the install software upgrades and the ongoing maintenance. It also saved us from having to purchase a computer for assessing, so we just moved the old standalone to assessing, and then we're going to be cloud-based. So that worked out. But needless to say, we did have hiccups, and we were pretty much out of business for a day with the computer that couldn't keep up. Your absentee ballots are still available, and we will be closed here on election day in order to staff the election. The Red Barn Road subdivision's been finalized. The update on broadband, that was brought up by Skip Viles at the last meeting. I've sent him a hard copy response to that from there, but poll permits have all been applied for. They have 180 days to complete their review to make it ready. And that's the longest part of the process. We are in a good position in terms of the timing of it. The timing still remains uncertain. Also, the county broadband planning report's complete. I peeled through that this afternoon. And right now they're putting the cost of getting cable service out to everybody in Norridgewock that's underserved is 2.4 million. Whereas if you were to run the new fiber network, it's 4.7. That's the pure estimated construction cost, not what we would actually be responsible for. So there's a county share, and then there's a potential county share, and there's potential for state and federal aid there as well. And then provider contributions. So like with Beach Hill, there's zero local share at all. It's 100% provider. So I think by the time we look at what our gap is, and we get provider on board, that probably Connect Me money and or county money would help to bridge that gap and either bring it to little or nothing for us. So still premature there. They've also asked me to serve on the Broadband committee to help coordinate the efforts in our southern part, so I've agreed to that. Jonathan Wheaton, the local photographer who's doing seasonal photography for us, is now submitted the second batch, so we'll pay for that tonight. And then I've got a preliminary third batch. So we're looking pretty good there, and I think there's going to be a lot of good use in our marketing materials down the line that will make good use of that. So good things happening there. The MEMA training that I went to with regards to emergency sheltering, that was very beneficial. A lot of quality materials, checklists, and things like that to just make it easier when you're flying blind in that kind of a situation. The vaccine clinic, that's for flu and COVID, not one, not the other. We're really not politicizing this. We're just trying to offer a service to folks who may otherwise be having a difficult time getting into a doctor's office. That's going to be at the election. And we did get some good exposure out of the center for that. The FEMA reimbursements that we had, all of those grant monies that we applied for, things that were extended but declined, they've now shifted the policy on that. It's going to open up the door for us as long as we have at least $3,000 worth of qualified expenses. That notice came in today, so I've already ratcheted up over $3,000 worth of qualified expenses. On Friday, I have a call with Maine EMA and the public assistance funders to review those, as well as go back through this calendar year, which was previously ineligible, and we're going to look through, fine-tooth comb anything that we can possibly look for with regards to that. So this is our command center, if you will. Because I'm emergency management director, so anything associated with this building then becomes far more eligible, whether it's technology or entrance exit, things like that. So we'll see come Friday what we can fit into that box, and that will also include any PPE expenses or whatnot. So on that, we were able to secure a bunch of PPE from county to support fire department expenditure, which otherwise would have been probably ballpark 1,000, talking gloves and things like that, that you really just can't get access to. County was able to help us out with that, so we were able to avoid that expense altogether. Taxes were due on the 21st. Our collection rate's pretty stagnant, zero change in personal property, and just a slight uptick in traditional real estate collection. The fire officers did end up submitting their King Foundation grant application for extraction equipment. If you didn't see the email, you're invited to go over to the fire station after where they're trialing, demoing their ideal equipment as far as they know. And they've got 2 cars over there. They're going to be cutting and opening and things like that. So that will be after this if you were interested. The total grant request was $39,491. We haven't got a grant from the King Foundation since the back room at Sophie May, so there's a pretty good chance that something like that would be recurring. There is also discussion about the funds that are supposed to be coming in from the Emory estate, and if this isn't successful, then that would be something that is still a high priority for the department that they would then consider to use those funds for when and if they become available. We've also been working with staff over to the school for a fire safety mini course with the kids. That's going to happen next Tuesday. It looks like it's going to be a chunk at the middle of the day, but we'll get an engine over there. We've got some handouts. I got online and got some stuff from FEMA that we should be able to hand out to the kids as they come through. So that'll cover pre-K through grade 2 next Tuesday.
Why is it only through 2nd grade? Why not the older grades?
I'm not sure. The request came over for pre-K through 2, and so that's what I agreed to. We could have done anything. I mean, we're creating activity books in-house here, and then the FEMA supplies, I just ordered those online. Hopefully they'll come in on time. But, you know, it's really, the school didn't want to do it. I met briefly yesterday with the superintendent, so he could work with the principal to make sure that we could get through the door, because what happened was we scheduled, we got staff, volunteers, people taking the day off from work. And then, oops, it's school picture day. So how are we going to do that? So that's what we worked out today, so that I could get teachers, number of kids in the schedule there. We were committed to whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And they really didn't want us, but I pushed to get in there. I know it was something that, you know, we dropped last year. We're trying to get these kids back into something normal. And so that's kind of where we are. The speed tables, they were installed too high. Don't know how that happened.
I almost bottomed out in a 4Runner.
So I came back on Monday and I'm like, yeah, they're definitely too high, but I got over them safely enough. We put the call in and Fine Line came back very quickly. They ground them down. They made do until they could get their full crew here to repair it. They're going to take care of the extra cost of striping the second trip around. They offered us other discount, and candidly, I declined it and said, look, you're providing us what we want. You've been extremely responsive. And I just didn't feel good about them losing their shirt on it. They, at every step, you know, whether it was a call or a text, they were connected with us. And it's done right by us. And it's not worth losing that relationship for that. So the fact that they're going to cover our incremental striping bill, we already covered everything else. So I was very pleased with that. An opportunity that has come up since our last meeting was with the engineering firm St. Germain. They're actually soliciting, and well, I took the bait. They're willing to come up front and take a look at culverts that we have that would be eligible for stream crossing grants. That's up to $125,000 per project. So we have one that we've been looking at for a few years now on Winding Hill at Bomsey Brook in the Twin Hills. And then there's one just being opportunistic up on Red Barn Road. The subdivision has been approved. We're going to need to see some improvements on that road. And so that's Turner Brook there. These guys are coming in at no cost to us. If we don't get the grant, there's no love lost. If we do get the grant, then it's just like FAA with Gale Associates, then they'll seek reimbursement through the grant. So good opportunities there. They're actually, we're boots on the ground today, supposed to be them to do the upstream, downstream slope analysis and things like that. So we'll keep an eye on that, but that's through the state of Maine, but then it's bolstered by the Nature Conservancy, which is the same group that helped supplement heat pumps. So anyway, good opportunities for us there. Ball field drainage project, that's coming to a close. We do have depressions in there. It's very noticeable when you drive by. That was in large part attributed to the change in drain that was approved. And things are settling down through. So compaction, the alternate drain, anyway, it all seems very fixable. The top dressing needs to be added to the infield, which will happen in the spring, and they're going to reseed again. It was all done according to plan, but we know we need it to be what it is, even if the plan didn't work perfectly. So the contractor said for an additional $2,500, they will make it perfect. They'll take care of all the reseeding, the leveling, and everything else come spring. So that's been added to the contract. They volunteered back additional retainage, so that we'll have that lump of money come spring to get that done, so that we're in good condition for baseball season. So that's where we are with the ball field drainage. And then there's been a lot of discussion about availability of the school for open gym and basketball. Preliminary indication is that we're going to be able to have access to that as a traditional season, with the exception of mandatory masking for everybody, regardless of vaccination status while they're in the building. That would be subject to audit, and it's going to be a condition if we do run rec basketball in that building, that the child would be banned from the program if they or family members refuse to comply with the rule. If that, in my mind, if that's what we have to do in order to have access to the building run rec program, then that's what we would agree to.
So the kids, while they're playing, will be wearing masks? Okay.
At least until things change. We're kind of at the schools,
Yes.
you know, whatever they would need, then that's what we're gonna comply with. TIF meeting next Tuesday, that is up in the air. I've got a message up to the chair to see if they want to convene there. Airport advisory is next Wednesday at 9. Assessors meeting next Thursday at 9. We've got a 2-page agenda, but it should move rather quick. Library meetings the next week. The water district has invited me to talk about a few different things at their November meeting. So I'll have something for you there, the second meeting in November. And then the road committee is got their eye on the sky in terms of finding a rainy day to get together at lunch and talk about projects there. But we've kind of agreed just to play it by ear, and if it looks like it's gonna be a rainy day, then we'll do that so that guys don't move far.
Thank you. Good. All right, moving on, discussion action on October 20th, general warrant number 20.
Let's get moving. I move that we approve general warrant number 6 for $755,491.61.
I'll second that.
Motion in a second. Any further discussion?
That's a very big number, but the 676,000 of it is county and school.
Yeah, and we'll hold this, the county's not due until the 1st, so Peter will hold that check until the 1st.
Okay, yeah, 520,000.
How many times a year has that happened? Just the
Once.
once.
And that's our first big delivery of salt.
That was as part of stockpiling. So Peter went back and looked at last year. We took 5 loads this year with stockpiling. It's been 6 the last 2 years.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Abstaining? No, in favor? Opposed? Opposed, okay. Right on. Right, discussion action on airport warrant number 10.
Make a motion, we accept warrant. Yeah, airport warrant number 10 and $27,730.00.
I'll second that.
Motion in a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? All right, discussion action on sewer commitment.
So commitment amount this month is $20,984.15.
Move to approve or set amount.
Motion in a second to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All right, public comment? No, we're good. Isn't that how that is? And there will be presentation by Waste Management and mainly by the people.
Not really a presentation, but more discussion with folks. For 3 years now, I've been working with Mark King from Maine Department of Environmental Protection, specific to composting. Mark came to me a few years ago wanting to work with the sustainability group from the University of Maine at Farmington. We've had some projects and some intern students, and this summer, a student, Chelsea Roy, and Mark approached me about, Mark knows that as part of our upcoming expansion, the new transfer station that we will construct and open in 2023 will have a compost site as part of it. The ability for the surrounding communities that use it, Norridgewock, to compost. So Mark and Chelsea approached me during the summer intern program and asked if we would consider kicking off a trial program with education from Mark and company. I said, sure. So what I approached Richard was we're going to, with Chelsea, the student, put out a survey to the community, just Norridgewock, for starters. That'll be a survey that'll be generated through Mark and some of the experiences he's had. I'll let him speak to that in a second, with other communities. And they will be seeking a pledge from, we're going to try to do 50 people at first, of a commitment to a program and see where it takes us. We've been working with Mark for, again, 3 years now, composting material with the University of Farmington and the fairgrounds with horse manure. We have a substantial pile of horse manure now that we've been turning and managing, and we're now going to incorporate some organics with it from the community. So with that, I would like to introduce Mark King, who is the state's authority on composting. He can tell you lots of stories of things he's doing through COVID that are pretty interesting, but Mark King.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I put this card in front of you. I didn't want to do a full presentation because it's really still just an idea we're developing. But this is ever since 2004, we've been vigorously chasing food scraps as one of our white whales to try and get out of the waste stream, because in a landfill, they generate lots and lots of leachate, which then mixes with the really nasty leachate that's in garbage and results in more and more treatment needed for the leachate, which is very expensive and resource intensive. The other thing is that when organics are left in a landfill, they break down anaerobically without oxygen, and they produce methane. And methane is a really potent greenhouse gas. If you take that same material and you put it in a pile of horse manure that has come out of the stalls, it's fairly fresh and vigorous and hot, it'll actually tie that material up and create a humic material called compost that holds on to those nutrients and makes them available slowly over time, as opposed to having them leach out all at once. The benefit is that a lot of our local soils are really poor in nutrients and health and vitality, and compost helps to bring that back. It helps build the physical structure, it holds on to nutrients, and during drought, it holds on to water like crazy. So fields treated with compost actually will hold on to water longer and have less drought experience. So I've been working with the state, well, I've been there 30 years, but 2004, we started a very active program. And one of the things I learned very quickly is that in order to address our food scrap issue, the silver bullet's not going to be large facilities all over the place. It's going to be more small facilities. So I started meeting with towns all over the state. Skowhegan is one that's local that I work with. And I basically met with the selectmen and I said, here's what I want to do. I want to get citizens who are interested in pulling food scraps out, that are willing to take a class. It's going to be a short class, and willing to take a bucket and a little pail. The pail actually goes on their kitchen counter. When they're preparing their meals, all the scraps they make go into this bucket. At the end of their meal, when they do their dishes, this comes out to the porch and dumps into here. And the idea would be that once this bucket is full, it weighs about 27 pounds. They would then bring it to waste management, to the transfer station. We would have 2 containers there to accept food scraps. When those containers were full, or as necessary, they'd be picked up and taken into the facility to where we have a compost site, which is away from the public. And the food would go into a pile of fresh horse manure. And the idea is that you can feed that pile many, many, many times before you need to turn it. Every time you turn a compost pile, you reinvigorate it with oxygen, you mix the material, you make the microbes happy, and you get good high hot temperatures. But the really cool thing is that when you start out with horse manure, it's about the color of your vest, really tan. By the time we're done flipping it and turning it, it's the color of the chairs you guys are sitting in. We call that gaining humus. And that is a really cool thing, because we've taken something leachable and environmentally problematic and turned it into a soil that's going to just make our healthy soils even more healthy. So that's my goal. Jeff has been really supportive. I've thrown a lot of harebrained ideas at him. I graduated from UMF in 1986. It's my alma mater. I live in New Sharon. And I came to him with a lot of these ideas because I want young students to get a grip on the whole sustainability idea and become adults that then pass it on to their children. And so it's been great to work with this facility because he brings students in and gives them a chance to kind of work around with different items. So all we're hoping to do is incorporate the citizens of Norridgewock, get something going, make it really positive, have lots of education, make sure that we work all the kinks out, and then slowly open it up to the other communities around that go to Norridgewock.
Right on. That's great. It's simple. God, that's, yeah.
The only thing that confuses me not some of that is where do you already have a consistent steady stream of horse manure? Because that is one of the most sought after. I mean, I have horses, so I know
Yeah.
how no one gets rid of their horse manure. So I mean, and
Well, Farmington, we have from the racetrack, and there is a ton of it. And what we don't use at our facility goes right to these guys.
there is enough to.
It has been so far.
Yeah.
And then we took care of from the racetrack at Skowhegan Fair this year as well. So we've had 2. We also work with Bangor. So we have 3 areas to pull from. We don't want to haul it all the way from Bangor here, but
Yeah.
most generally Farmington. We can combine it with transportation going in that direction.
Now, you raise a great point, though. As part of the class that I would give, I'm also going to support home composting because every community-based effort needs to have, there are some people that don't want to go to the transfer station, but they would do it at home. In your case, where you have lots and lots of horses, you might be willing to
My
dump.
husband has his landscape facility, so we do all the composting there, and it's liquid gold with like my horses. I think that's one of the reasons I get away with it.
Would you be interested in the possibility of taking some of your neighbors' food and adding it to your pile?
We don't
So
use any human waste in ours for whatever reason.
Sure.
That one,
so it'd be food scraps from their home, but all clean stuff
Yeah.
will be well-educated.
I'm sure John would do that.
But do you notice the thing that's beautiful about this is that I'm connecting all the different aspects of the community. So it's not a one-shot deal, it's multiple efforts. I also work with the Department of Agriculture and farms, and I help them write compost management plans. And the advantage of a compost management plan is that you can take 60 cubic yards of food scraps and other like lobster shells, whatever, without a DEP permit, as long as you have a compost management plan.
Nice.
So I've been working with ag for a very long time because I think I'm part a farmer myself. So, but the benefit of that is that there's a lot of farmers who had dairy animals and other things, and that's kind of declined a little, but they still have the infrastructure. And all we're trying to do is help them find a different way to make that infrastructure pay them back. So all this would be included, but this piece here is what Jeff wants to provide. And then we would extend it out to other options. If farmers in the area wanted, I would hook them up with ag and myself, and we do compost management plans. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
What do you do with the compost after?
Okay, excellent question. So at Farmington, and I'm not advocating that you sell a thing, but at Farmington, do you guys remember the Sandy River Recycling Center years ago? It was 21 Western Maine towns that worked together for recycling. When that went belly up because of the crash in the recycling market, they had a compost site that we designed, and they were getting ready to just abandon it. And I got them to give it to the town of Farmington. Now, the town of Farmington, Dick Davis has always been a champion of solid waste, and I'm sorry to see him retire, but he said to me, I will take this over in the town's name as long as it never costs a cent. So we held 3 sales there a year, and we made roughly $7,000 a year from the compost sales. And that paid for someone from Public Works to come and operate the site. And it pays for 1 internship every year to come and learn about sustainability.
Wow.
So it has paid for itself. So one thought is he wants to give all his away. He doesn't want to sell it. He just wants to give it to citizens. You could have, for example, offer some to the school to put in little bags. We normally sell ours for $30 a cubic yard in the pickup. But if you put it in a cubic foot bag, you can get $5 a piece. They're very attractive and people like that. And there's 27 cubic feet in a yard. So all of a sudden you make that cubic yard turn into some real dollars. And that can go to schools for the kids to use for field trips and experiential activities. So there's no end to what you can do with it. As long as we do things right, we make sure the material is clean, and we teach people, the ones that come and participate, exactly what can go in the bucket, which, as you notice right here, I'll pass this around, there's acceptable and non-acceptable materials. As a general rule, was once alive, you can compost it. But there are certain things like meat and other things that we discourage from small piles because they attract animals. But in a pile like he's talking about, you can take everything, even ice cream. So,
That leads me to my next question. You said as long as we do things right.
yes.
Does this get tested to make sure there's nothing in there?
Yeah, what we do, well, first and foremost, it's only gonna be clean food scraps because we're gonna be very vehement about that. And so unless somebody was trying to be a bad actor, in most cases, the ones that I get to sign the pledge, they bring us really clean material. He will have somebody there checking when things get dumped to make sure there's no trash, because trash doesn't help. Any trash, then you have to screen it, and that's an extra cost. But we will once a year take a sample, we'll send to the University of Maine at Orono, and they have a soil testing lab, and they will do a compost analysis for us. So we'll be able to know exactly what's in it, and we can tell people exactly what it can be used for. We'll never, ever try to push a product beyond its reasonable use. Like if someone says, I want to put this in my greenhouse, and I know it's got high soluble salts, I'll say, absolutely not. That would be a mistake. But if you want to put it in a cornfield, it's perfect because corn doesn't mind salt. So we will work through all of those pieces, and when necessary, reinforce the education in a very positive way.
So we'll know there's no PFAS or anything.
Yes, yes.
10 years from now.
Trust me, I'm in the midst of that.
It's a hot topic.
It is. Well,
He approved all that.
I know. I'm working with the Fairfield site, and I've been composting a lot of different things there. So no, absolutely not. That we will make sure that that material doesn't have that in it. But I will tell you that we won't take any compostable flatware or plates or any of that because they do have PFAS. It'll be straight, and we can actually start with what we call prep material first, pre-consumer, which means basically it's when you go to your kitchen, you make your salad, you pop the ends off. We can start with just that and just see how things go. And then the next step is plate scrapings at the end of Thanksgiving when your eyes are bigger than your stomach. All that becomes what they call post-consumer. And so, but the key is to start out really small. And as they say in the military, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You go slow, when you make a mistake, it's a little one, you fix it, and then you grow and go faster. So that's what we'll do.
Nice, Ellie. Any questions? In the back?
I'm wondering about those buckets. I don't go to the dump except once, every month or so,
Okay.
and I fill one of those buckets almost once a day.
Jeff's got another one right now in front of him. I
Yeah,
believe it's
How
small.
do you feel about if we showed you how to do it at home? How do you feel
well, I
about
do
it
it
at
at
home?
home.
You do?
Yeah.
Well, then how about you take one of those buckets and you go use your home site? This just gives you something nice to put it in. What's really
I
cool?
know, I don't need any more plastic in my life, thank you.
I don't work for a company, but I love the guy's concept. This lid's perforated, so it breathes, and guess what? It doesn't get in. Fruit flies. You know how fruit flies are around?
Oh,
and these
yeah,
are
they're
really-
all over my wall.
Not with these around.
Yeah,
And the cool thing is at the top of this, there's a little ridge, and that ridge seals out any bugs. So if you, and we're not saying that everybody has to.
right.
But if you want to, you get one of these free. If you don't want to and you want to keep doing what you're doing, I'll applaud you for doing what you're
Well,
doing.
I'll do some of each because I can't put any
Perfect.
animal products in. And if we have any animal products, they could go in this.
Well, one of the things too I'm going to teach, and this is a gross subject, but people have a lot of pet manure, dog and cat and things, and they wonder what to do with it.
Oh.
I actually have a compost system that you can use. You just keep it on the edge of your property and you'll make compost out of it, but you just spread it in the woods around your property, not where people are going to walk around. So nothing ever should be wasted. And it helps everything grow. So really honestly, composting is really the solution to a lot of problems.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think it's something that hopefully the town gets behind. I know I will personally support it. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I'll be
My
back
other
with the
question is
technical
if you need a pledge from people to get this,
30 feet.
what about the people who haven't pledged, but go to the dump and say, oh, they have composting, how do I do that? Do they then get a bucket from
They,
there?
they have to agree to come to a class, and the classes, we're not talking about a long time. So basically, the first 50 we'll do things with, and then I can do something that goes online. I can actually give a reading material, and then the idea becomes basically that they do it because they want to do something positive. And people that want to do things positive aren't going to just put garbage in the container. And so our key is just to keep reinforcing that. And I have my young intern, Chelsea, is very young, very impressionable, very vivacious. I'm going to have her do a training. And the thing that I love about her is that she finds a positive spin on everything. Even if you do something wrong, she finds a way to spin it in such a positive way that you feel like you did something right, just the wrong way. And she's really cool. So we just, our whole goal is not for this to impact negatively, but to create a positive opportunity.
Nice. No, you have.
I also have another question about the bags that you're gonna give the children with of the finished compost.
Those are to be sold at like farmers market.
Whatever they're gonna
Yeah,
give them. You're talking about creating a plastic bag.
no, I'm not. I'm talking about using a recycled grain bag.
Ah,
And we get those from like Ace Hardware and some of the feed stores. No, I'm all about
Can I
repurposing.
give you my grain bags too?
Yeah, of course you can. As a matter of fact, we would be very thankful if you did.
All right.
You guys do want gray bags?
We love grain bags.
All right. Okay.
So go forward
That kind
plan,
of thing should be advertised at the grain store.
The problem is that you don't create a mad rush until you have everything in place. We still have a lot of structure to build. And so that's what we're just trying to taste the concept, and we want to build it so that when people do decide to use it, it's fully functional.
so the plan is to work with Chelsea Roy, the student. And I'll communicate with Richard. We will take care of the survey to go out to the mailer to the community. And then Chelsea with Mark and my help will screen out 50. And that's where we'll go. And as Helen has said, if other people ask and we inquire, we'll go through Mark, make sure they get some education, and we don't want to turn anybody down.
No, absolutely
We don't
not.
want to see people go with it. So walk before we run, but that's our plan.
Nice.
And what's your estimated time frame for this?
I'd like to have something, the survey rolled out in the next couple of weeks, and then I'd like to see how positive the response is. And then I can do a training any night or weekend, depending on what the best interest is for folks. So it's not that hard for me to get there. We'd probably do it right at the transfer station site, because that's where they're gonna be coming.
And I also asked Richard if we could potentially use this room.
Oh, okay, that'd be cool too. Yeah, no, and basically, I'll also I have a wire bin out in my truck that is it's lobster trap wire. I find that lobster trap wire is the best kind of compost unit because it's got those nice 1-inch squares. It's made with a galvanized steel that's epoxy coated. And you take a section that's 4 feet tall or 3 feet tall, depending on whether you have little kids or not, and you 12 feet long, and you roll it in a cylinder. When that's filled to the max, it has about a cubic yard, which is what you need for it to maintain temperature to stay through the winter. So it becomes the perfect kind of unit. You just fill it up and forget about it. Next year, when you come back, there's compost. So works really good.
You should definitely reach out to my husband. I mean, he is, probably 150 feet long. There's probably 10 of them, and they're 50 feet high compost rows, and
Wow.
turn it and they do all that at the facility. So if like you need option, you need extra space, or even like to bring people out to show them how it's done, like
Yeah.
there's always guys that they're turning it, putting in those giant long like thermometer things going,
Yeah,
making sure
cool.
it's going there. So he, I'm sure, would be completely on board with helping out and facilitating anything.
I think that's great. And for the school, if the school was interested in doing something, some of that horse manure, giving a mini pile, so there's some opportunity.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah, if you just tell my husband to get more horse manure, he'd probably like do whatever he wants there, because
Wow.
he's using mostly cow now, there's no human waste or anything like that, but I'm sure there's enough property there and we
Yeah.
have the manpower to turn it, so
Perfect.
to help without anything, I'm sure he'll be
Well,
with him work.
not to get gross, but horse manure, when it comes out of the stalls, is super biologically active. And I do a lot of mortality management for the state when whales and seals and other animals die. In 2018, we had an unusual mortality event. We lost 1,000 seals along the Maine coast from Far Harbor all the way down to Kittery. And what we did is we found key communities that had a lot of mortalities. And we actually put the seals in their leafing yard compost piles. And they went right to foam in less than 6 weeks. And so it was just a perfect kind of way to deal with the mortalities and not worry about, they all had distemper. So the thought was that a dog or, you know.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of biologically active, and food loves biologically active compost.
If anyone's worried about the smell too, horse manure is one of the only ones that once it cools up doesn't smell.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not
right.
like cow poop. Once that turd cools down, it doesn't smell anymore. Just, you know.
It's awesome stuff.
Speaking of that, he's a hot guy.
Well, some people have like lots of like, you know, manure, like horse poop doesn't smell.
Richard, you have anything?
Yeah, just for a minute, Mark, what's your job title?
I'm an organics management specialist, and I basically head up the organics program for the department. And I want to just give a quick prop to this. This basically is the way that we deal with food. And the first part is that we just don't make waste in the first place. And people say, well, how the heck do I do that? Well, if you have a buffet, normally if you do a wedding buffet, you say there's 100 people, they make 120 meals just in case, overflow. Well, now you say you got 100, you make 100 meals, period. And if there's an overflow, they eat crackers and cheese, you know, it's not a big deal. But if you can't do that, or you have an excess, I'm a big fan, and I'm pushing this in the state of having, if the food is hot, keeping it hot and bringing it immediately to a homeless shelter and feeding people while it's still warm. It isn't until it cools off that the coliform bacteria start to form on food. So there's lots of stuff that if it's kept warm, is still edible. When that can't happen, then we feed animals. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of material, whether it's cooked or not, that is great feed for animals. That even with pigs, it has to be cooked, especially if it has any meat in it. But there's lots of stuff that doesn't have meat in it that can be used for animals. It's just not being wasted. And then when you can't do that, we either compost it or we send it up to Exeter and they put it in the digester. And then on the bottom is disposal, and that includes waste to energy or landfill. But here's the deal. If you can take this material and you compost it first, and let's say that in your case, it has contamination in it, it can go to the landfill and be used as alternative daily cover, which means they don't have to buy soil. And that means soil can stay on a field a little bit longer, and that resource is available for growing crops as opposed to being harvested to be used for daily cover. So I'm always trying to find a positive way, no matter where you're on this chain. So there's actually the friendlier thing that also.
That's it.
Okay.
I'll be in communication with Richard. I'll leave this with you.
Perfect. Can I ask one question? I didn't, from the blind side here. Do you have a status for us on the appeal? Nothing.
We're hearing that maybe in December, it'll go before the board,
Okay.
if not early January. And I'd like to think a decision will be made then. But
Right. I just haven't seen anything in a while, so I haven't really given these guys an update either, so.
we're told December.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks with you.
Yeah, I'll find something.
Put on Sharon's desk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he's stealing the 5-gallon pail. I could have made wine in that.
Same.
That's simple like that. Yeah, discussion action on donations.
We have received $100 donation from Joseph and Lou Victoria to support community food access.
Do we accept the $100 donation?
Motion second. Any further discussion? None. All those in favor?
So that's just going into an account for now.
Yeah, we received $5,000 from New Balance with a long-term goal of developing food or improving food pantry access. And then every month he's been coming in religiously, probably for the last 2 years and donating. And then on one-offs through the meal program that ran, donations trickled in from that too. So it's in a designated account that's held strictly for that purpose.
Wouldn't it be amazing if we had this whole full circle of composting and then community gardens and the food goes into our thing? Like, whoa, wouldn't that be kind of amazing for Norridgewock? Kooky idea, but.
There's potential. Right, anyway, the motion. Excellent. All right, right, discussion on budget goals. Huh? Oh, Oh, did we vote as a nation? Oh, no, we didn't. Okay, well, there's a motion second.
Yep.
There's no further discussion. All those in favor? Okay, yeah, that's everybody. All right, so now we'll move on to discussion on budget goals.
Budget goals, if I didn't catch that.
Right, we're coming into budgets and just wondering, we haven't touched our own goals or anything. It's an opportunity for us to kind of take some direction of where we want to go with next year. I mean, provided we're all here for the next budget cycle, I don't know. We'll set goals really high. Right, I'm right, want to provide an opportunity to really look at anything that we deem as high importance that we want to see happen. Right, you know, for myself, I've been focused on the swim area. I mean, I actually got that email. I'm assuming everyone else did about the design on that.
No.
Oh, they didn't. I actually, okay, I love that actually, so that was perfect. But I guess for me, that's something that was important. I want to see that move forward. In the ball field was another big one. I know that you had a lot of support in that, and that's kind of got there, and that slab is in and looks good. And I know that the batting cage will be the next piece of that needs to happen on the field.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if anybody has anything in mind. You know?
Yeah, I'm kind of just wondering, like, I mean, we haven't nailed down that $342,000 that we're sort of figuring we're gonna put that, because I think that, you know, and figure out if that's a starting point for some stuff. Because there's obviously like some like kind of wish list things, you know, I was thinking about like, all right, the straight face like marker, like, okay, what can we really like tie into that? And obviously from like the rec standpoint, you know, I was really trying to think into some things that not just like for the kids with like the rec thing, but like other parts of like the community, like the pickleball stuff, like there's a lot of adults that did that stuff. So like what else can not just elementary kids, you know, K through 6th grade do, but like what can some other people, maybe that's when we figure out how to have like ice skating or something like that. There's not a lot of things other than basketball inside, and a lot of people aren't going to be comfortable with that, I'm guessing, this year because of COVID. You know, is that maybe something we can figure out how to fund? You know, we do have a big field. It is an expenditure, but is that something that could allow more town people, not just little kids, to participate in something? I don't know the funding, I don't know the liability, but I'm just trying to think of other ways where we can get people outdoors, get them active, that otherwise maybe wouldn't be, that, you know, can bring kind of community together, but like not just kids, something that can be for everybody. You know, like it's nice to see, you know, like I would see Jim out there with pickleball while my kids are having softball. I think that it's great that we have some programs for the kids, but I think that like we kind of miss out on a big chunk of our population of getting other people out to do something. You know, it's not just walking around town. Like I think that's a big miss for us. I think, you know, the swimming thing is a great thing. I think we need to start focusing more on, let's get people outside, move a little bit more. Like that's good for the town. You know, the trail thing isn't going to happen for a while, it still looks like. So I mean, if we have the ability, and we have the funds that we can kind of move things around, you know, what are some other ways that we can get more people of all activity and, you know, abilities out there doing to enjoy being outside? And I think that's the kind of stuff that I'd like to look at. It's going to bring people in, it's going to bring people to the town, spending money at like our different stores and shops and stuff like that. I think it's just good for the community to have people outside, getting fresh air, being around other people, not being so isolated. I think that's going to be important this winter for people.
I like that. Definitely. I know there's a lot of talk about walking with the elderly right now and how to accommodate that. So I think those are great things. Yeah, so I mean, that's really all this was, you know, just kind of in the back of my mind, and that's perfect. And I mean, I know there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of talk about the airport and stuff. And I don't know if anybody, I mean, I know we haven't had the opportunity to have them in yet, but myself, I do feel like we want to move forward with anything we can at the airport. You know, there was talk about an addition or a full-blown renovation. So I mean, those are all real things, those are all viable options. And if we have a concern or some want as a board to move forward with those, I think that we should focus our efforts to make that happen.
I think I'd have to see how that place makes money before I would even remotely consider. I mean, they haven't been in the black for making any money. So I think I look at the airport as, you know, any type of business. If we're going to spend a lot of money. One, okay, if it doesn't make any money, does it bring a lot of value to a lot of like the residents of the town? You know, like ice skating might not do that, but a lot of people could enjoy it. Like the airport, are a lot of the town people going to enjoy it if they don't have an airplane? Probably not. But is it going to make the town money? If it makes the town money and only 5 people enjoy it, fine. But if it's not making any money, it's losing money, and only like a small sector actually like using it, I'm not for that. I think we can spend the money in a better way. But if it'll make money, fine, but if not, I feel like we dump enough money at that place. Like it's,
I like that, in some sense, but in the same sense that not everybody's gonna do sports, not everybody has kids.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of value at our airport, and it's something that's not gonna go away. I mean, we're signed on for life, so we want to keep that moving forward, and I just don't know what that is, and I think that the airport and the people that work there will know. And I'm just, we've yet to have it come in, so I don't know. The board wants to sit and have a discussion with the airport to see where they
I mean,
are.
I think you're right, Matt. Not everybody's gonna go swimming.
Right,
Yeah.
That builds on the community. Not everybody's gonna use the rec field.
Yes.
Not everybody's gonna play
yeah,
pickleball.
but they're not getting $1 million paving jobs though. Like, that's the thing. I mean, it's the amount of expenditure, I think, for me. It's the enormous amount of money. You know, there's nothing that's happening on a softball field that costs even remotely what a generator costs at like the airport. It's just the level of expenditure. So like, I mean, I get it. Everyone has their niche things they do. It's just the amount of money that keeps getting spent. It's this big.
But the
this big.
high percentage of that is federally subsidized.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
on it really, I would be interested to know.
Our municipal commitment, right,
Yeah.
is 5%, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Compared to, federal
I
money is
mean,
all our money,
Yeah,
but
what was our thing we get? We don't get a bill like this from rec or swimming or anything like that every single like.
But that's deceiving because what the majority of that is fuel, and we're gonna turn that out and we're gonna make money.
So you can sell fuel. So out of that $27,000.
So what does the airport make?
The airport is either breaking even or as close to breaking even as it's ever been. Through the work of this board, Richard and the people at the airport, they worked pretty tirelessly to make improvements to the airport so that it would break even. Because it had been a loss for a long time.
oh my gosh.
It ran a tally and
Money
it
did
did. Did it finally reimburse everything or is it still?
No.
So
It's still in the.
it's an ongoing,
Yeah.
but there's.
I mean, I totally support.
Yeah. I just think any money that
totally
gets spent.
support rec, but I bet if you almost look at it, rec costs us more money than the airport. Because you get money from the hangars, you get money from the airplanes in the restroom. If you looked at the total picture, I would almost bet it's.
That would be interesting to look at. I would like to see those numbers.
But if I had my sports would be free. So I'm not, I agree, again, I would not have to try to kid, but anyway, so this is great. I mean, this is exactly what this conversation was intended for. So I think we'll just find a way to keep this on our agenda when they're light. I know we're coming into budgets, but this is definitely a back burner.
No, it's not.
Well, for your mind, I mean.
It's gonna be on the next
Well,
agenda
things, right?
because Matt and I were talking last week before, and everybody's kind of got their own goals, whether it's taxes or projects or this and that. And so it helps me prioritize what I need to do, but I'm gonna be building a budget. Typically what I build for a budget doesn't deviate a whole lot from what you guys end up with. So if I don't have that project coming right out of the gate that we want to put on as a priority, then it's not gonna probably make its way through the process. And so that's really the end of why I wanted it on here, was so we can get your priority projects out on the table. And so that we can work the budget around them if we need to. Because, the ARPA money, that's great. It's gonna be $300,000 before the end of next year, but whatever we have, it's gonna be voted on by townspeople. That money's gonna be released. So if you're comfortable just saying, okay, let's allocate 350,000 and just the town will do that, and great. But if you want to break it up by project, then those are all considerations that need to be made, and we really need to have that all in line at budget time when we're going to town meeting to say, okay, if everything comes through, this is a priority for fire, this is a priority for public works, this is a priority for rec, it's a priority for the airport, and that's how we're going to utilize those funds. And then that would very likely have an impact on their regular department budgets. Or whatnot. So it's all kind of domino effect, and we haven't seen this influx of money and the styles of projects that we're looking at. It's a long time back here, to get $300,000, it's just coming in, and I'll say it's relatively non-earmarked because there's so much that you can do with it if you're creative.
Yeah.
Have you heard back from any of the committees or departments?
No, I haven't. The fire department I've got one kind of half submission from fire department, but they want to put some thought into it. They actually want to come in and give you the presentation. And I had an inquiry from somebody on rec. I had somebody from budget. I had an employee last week and another employee again today. Pretty minimal. So we're gonna have to send that back out because we're gonna need that. Those projects are gonna need to be done at the same time we're getting budget submissions.
We have to have a meeting. I know at least for rec, we have to probably have a meeting because I mean, I know that we have to.
We've got to get operating
Yeah.
together anyway.
Yeah.
But, so, you know, at the next meeting, if you've got other budget goals, then that's when we, you know, we want to get it out before I get too far into the spreadsheets and then we can redraw the budget.
So you're looking for this $320,000. I had a really nice list all written out, you know, in my haste to not miss the meeting because I spaced it.
So there's been a couple of conversations in-house about that in full transparency, and that is that nobody wants to come to the table early because they feel like they're making preferential treatment. And so it's a matter of timing them all in at a respectful time when you have everything on board. Because if I came today and said, I want to buy cell phones for everybody, well, sounds like a great idea today, maybe, you know, how you frame it. And then for you to just say, oh yeah, that is a great idea, let's do it before you see everything else. Not fair to everything, even your own ideas. So as those funnel in, I'm probably gonna keep them from you
That's fine.
until we say this is what we want to do, and we want to have this meeting, and we can get everybody here to talk about it, so that it's all out on the table, and we can talk about them and hear about them on a level playing field.
So do you want ideas from us or you'd prefer not to, or we're gonna be the last people?
I want ideas from every board, committee, and staff member.
So you want those now, you want them written down and later, you want
Send
them?
them on over to me, or you can hold them until the meeting when we want to talk about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, things like that. Naturally, I work for you guys, so if there's anything that you need me to build some background information on, then feel free to put that up to me.
Well, one just quick thing that I was thinking about, and to me, there's a value in it because this is a short term. You can't hire long-term people, you can't sustain long-term programs. But for me, it was always very valuable to have a employee. We used to have a summer grounds crew before we contracted. And to me, it was always extremely valuable to have a person, either a high school person or a co-op person at the high school working 20 hours a week, or someone available that can do, you know, run to town and grab a part, or they can empty the garbage at the town office, or they can wash a truck, or they can, you know, it's an entry-level position, it's a gopher position, but you don't have to tie up somebody with a class 2 license that should be out there doing something. Just you know, for me, but you can't sustain that long term.
So I've always been able to support funding that, just through attrition within the department and gaps.
Right.
We couldn't, this year we couldn't find anybody. Usually you can find somebody for a couple months.
Yeah.
You know, do some painting, things like that, and so it didn't really happen.
Okay.
We've now got a new hire on that doesn't have the full licensing, and so that's kind of, they've been studying, they've been operating equipment, working with that. But that's kind of that position, because Ben right now,
Okay.
below where somebody normal did.
I mean, in training, you know, you talk about training your public works, training your staff here, training fire people, those are all things that are included in those provisions or allowable job training. You know, somebody's got a class B license, you know, do they need a class A? Do they need a hazmat? Do they need, all of those things cost money. Anyway, I've got a list, so when we get ready to meet, I've got 6 or 7 items on there.
Where are we at as far as, I know that there was some confusion with like a food cupboard, like, because there kind of was one, and then we were
It's on
kind of
my list.
temporary. Well, can we be one now? Because I feel like there was some like gray area, of, like, can we or can we not?
Yeah, no, we can't. Right now, I'm sitting on a panel, or Opinion asked me to sit on, which is coordinated with Good Shepherd. It's $100,000 grant opportunity to solve food problems in Somerset County. So it's a pretty good working group. There's probably 6 of us that show up regular. There's very little doubt in my mind that we'll be able to access some of that, whether it's a structure or whether that's a vehicle, not sure. But no, we continue to have the concerns that we have about access to food on a regular basis. That hasn't changed, and that's why you've got folks like the Warriors that are donating on the regular. That's where's the need. That's one significant need. And we've been fortunate, you know, with extra food stamps, and coupled with the increase in food stamps and your stimulus, all of those things have kind of taken the load off, but that's gonna, the benefits cliff is what we're talking about. You know,
So
when
it's-
the rent assistance and the stimulus and all of this other stuff stops.
Yeah.
It's the benefits cliff, and so we're not in a position to deal with that.
Yeah, and I think that if we're looking at really like the letter of like what those funds are actually intended to help with. I think that that is probably most closely like probably gonna help with that kind of stuff. So, I mean, if we are in the spot where we kind of can take ownership of that and we can get rid of whatever it was, like, we should look at having something permanent in place that we can, you know, whether that is something that's an attachment here, or if it's something that happens at the fire station where there are full-time employees. There's some place where we already have staff that like, there's people there already, so it's not like an additional, like, someone you have to have there, but like, you know, someone can let someone in to get something, you know what I mean? So we're not like looking at staff, but it's like kind of an addition onto a building where we already have people that are.
Yeah, in my mind, it's gonna be a town responsibility, not to get too far off, but it would be a town responsibility to get something going. And ideally, long term, there's obviously gonna be a chunk every year that the town would allocate to support. But once it got up and there was infrastructure in place, then it could convert over to, you know, get yourself a volunteer board of directors
Yeah.
and run that way. And that's the way that most of the successful
So much
food
sense.
pantries run.
Yeah.
You know, you get that stimulus startup and then it transitions
Yeah.
over the course of, say, 2 or 3 years, and then the nonprofit, they finally audit and everything else.
Okay.
And that's kind of the most successful pattern that I can see happening for us.
So this would
It's
be
all
like the
about
opportunity to get
location.
that going, yeah.
It's location, location, location,
Very true.
because you want it to be central, but you don't want to be too central.
It's kind of like, can we get a twofer, like if the fire department really says that they have to have a garage, it also has to have a food pantry.
Pretty versatile.
It's gonna be like a BOGO.
So,
No, excellent. This is exactly what it's for. So awesome. Thank you. And right, just put some more on it and don't limit yourself to just these funds. I mean, if it's something that's outside scope of these funds, please.
Is this gonna be an agenda item in the future, or we're just?
I'm gonna put it on, hopefully at the next
Okay.
meeting, because again, it's largely to get a discussion going, but it's also to help me plan the budget. So if you see a need within a department, then.
Yeah.
let's get
Cameras
it
are
done.
the other thing too, that we have talked about a bunch of different times, but like we
Yeah.
kind of haven't.
Did you look at my list?
So those have been approved.
That's where it is. I can't find it.
And we're just working with Everett's, who said we can put it in their building, and everybody's crazy busy, but I said, you know, come up with a couple options that would satisfy you and the outside of everything, and then get it back to you.
Yeah, well, I think there's more locations. I mean, if we're gonna do a swim place, I think we should have, that park is, you know, and I also think if we're having a swim place, like we should have some sort of a structure there for changing different things like that. And I think when we have something like that, we need to have cameras there. And I know that was a big deal because we don't have any internet there. And like, if that's gonna be an expenditure, we have to look at that stuff now. And I think that we, you know, I think it's gonna be a really popular area. And we're gonna think of all that stuff. And if we do have a little chunk of extra money, we gotta be looking at that now. So we're not like, oh crap, we just spent a bunch of money and now it's been vandalized. Oops.
Good. Perfect.
Should I guess what else is on Jim's list?
Right, so other business?
Yes, if I could have a motion to add resignations to the agenda, please.
Second.
Everybody.
We have received a letter of resignation from Haley Fleming as a school board director. The process forward will be for you to accept his resignation, sign a thank you letter for his service. He said he still wants to remain on as some sort of an advisory capacity, but his work still prevents him from doing that. And then there would be an appointment that would only serve until March, and then whether that person or somebody else decided to pull nomination papers to then fill the seat for the remainder of the term. I have one application in already, and I had one go out today. So there is interest.
I move that we accept the resignation of Haley Fleming and also send out a thank you for your service letter.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Is everybody?
The next would be motion to add grant acceptance to the agenda.
So second.
We moved.
Motion second. Any further discussion?
Sharon's like, what the heck?
Seeing none, all those in favor? Is everybody?
All right, so not a formal release, but we have deadlines that we have to meet in terms of filing. The library has successfully applied for and been awarded a $3,000 grant from the American Library Association.
Nicely done.
More details to come when it's a formal public announcement.
So you need a motion to accept that
Yes.
grant?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the grant for the library.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Is everybody? Anything else? Okay. All right, executive session. Oops. Well, there's something in the back there.
Came for the budget. I'm building with this.
Build away.
I thought you had something, but not that she was waving goodbye.
Sign underneath the name.
I didn't know if she signed it.
I looked, I was like, wait.
Where did I sign?
signed all that.
It's not my name. What I do wrong?
Sign underneath instead of.
I almost did, but I love it. I was like, oh, wait, yeah.
Is there a line?
Very nice suggested.
Well,
And I said,
But I need a motion.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I'm
make a
gonna go
motion to go into
executive
executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 405-6C to discuss real estate acquisition.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Say everybody.
Position.
What, real estate or con?
Okay,
And we go back in.
you're gonna see this for 18 seconds.
All right, and will we go back into executive session to discuss contract agreement between town of Norridgewock Select Board and Richard A. LaBelle?
Second, any further discussion? See none, all those in favor, that's everybody.
I move that we sign a contract agreement between the town of Norridgewock Select Board, the contract with Richard A. LaBelle for a 3-year period of time from November 1st, 2021 to October 31st, 2024. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. There's that. All right, and
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?